All right, 512-834-1027 is the Game Time text line. Jack, did you see that the ratings came out yesterday for the first 3 days? So last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I'll just say, headline here, the March Madness games, the play-in games, the first four, including Texas, that Miami of Ohio team, and then into day one where Texas upsetting BYU and all the upsets we saw. There were no upsets on day two, which was Friday. But at least for those first 3 days, the 16 games that were on Thursday, those doubleheaders on Tuesday and Wednesday, it sets the record for the most watched opening 3 days and opening days of the men's tournament on record. On CBS, TNT, TBS, and True TV.
Pretty good. We're back.
Up 6%. The highest rated it had been last year. And now they're up from there with an all-time record. And, of course, the Thursday's primetime viewing, I mean, the games on Thursday were much better than Fridays as far as the compelling upsets. And because you had even the one-seed Michigan routed Howard. That got a great rating. VCU upset of North Carolina. That was the most watched first-round window that March Madness has ever had. Almost 13 million viewers watching that with Virginia Commonwealth. The late afternoon games with Duke, that Duke-Siena game where it was like, oh my gosh, Duke's losing to Siena and Jerry McNamara, who's now the coach at Syracuse. They go on for the 71-65 win. That one got a huge rating. High Points takedown of Wisconsin. 83-82 to come from behind. The program's first March Madness win. That was huge. And, of course, Texas taking down BYU with A.J. DeBonsa. Also, viewership through the roof. So that we don't have the Friday through the weekend. I'm assuming Friday was back down a little bit just because Fridays are Fridays and people, get into their weekends and go to dinners and whatnot. And the games weren't as good. I mean, the favorites went 16-0 on Friday, whereas it was pretty split with the upsets on Thursday. It was all chalk on Friday. I'm sure the ratings didn't dip too far, but we'll see when those come out. I'm sure the weekend was gangbusters because the games were must-see over the weekend. But, Jack, as we've talked about the demise of Cinderella, and folks weigh in on this, I mean, one of the main draws of the annual event here has always been in the month of March, the possibility of underdog teams, comprised of future, insurance salesmen and financial analysts and guys who aren't going to play pro basketball rising up and knocking off one of the nation's top programs, right? I'm 53 years old, so I've grown up. Jack, you're only 25, but there's been or 26 now. There have been some upsets. But, it's great watching NBA lottery picks like A.J. DeBonsa or Darius Acuff this year drop 30 bombs. But, for a lot of the common fans, the charm of this tournament, the allure outside of the brackets and the gambling and all that goes on with it, it pales in comparison to dudes like, remember Ali Faroukmanesh, Jack? TJ Sorrentine, Bryce Drew. I remember Bryce Drew at Valparaiso back in the day. You mentioned Jack Golke yesterday, becoming national names and all-time ballers. Who can forget Sister Jean at Loyola Chicago? But as we all witnessed over the past couple of Marches, the idea of a true Cinderella is disappearing. And the numbers don't lie. Do you realize over the first 4 days of the madness, the top seeds didn't just win their first round games, they crushed the mid-majors. The average margin of victory in the round of 64 was almost 18 points per game. They weren't close. I mean, not only did they not, Siena had their threat with Duke. That was the closest. But as far as a 13, 14, 15, 16 seed, no, 18 points a game was the average. That's the highest since the tournament expanded in 1985. The second largest margin as far as total score in those games was last year. So the trend line is obvious. And it's the second tournament in a row. Not a single team selected 13-16 won an opening round game. Mm-hmm. That's only happened once between 2008 and 2024. But now it's back-to-back years. And it could happen again. And we're going to hear an expert on this coming up. But so the top four seeds in each region went 4-0 in the first round. They got into the weekend. And then, of course, Florida's now out. But it's chalk, right? This will be the second time in NCAA tournament history when they tip back off on Thursday where the Sweet 16 is made up entirely of major conferences, right? The other time, last year, where it's the Power Four. There are 6 Big Ten teams left. There are 4 SEC teams. There are 3 Big 12 teams, 2 from the Big East and 1 ACC. So no mid-majors, no MACs, no MACtion. By the way, Jack, did you know that I was looking at the numbers? Big Ten is on a roll. Big Ten's won 3 straight college football national championships. They're not going to compete in baseball because they're Midwest and Northern climates. Maybe the West Coast. Maybe USC or UCLA wins the national championship.
They got a couple teams.
And UCLA is still number 1 with Texas number 2. But The Big Ten, of the 9 teams that made the tournament out of the Big Ten, 6 of them are still playing. That's pretty good. Included, you see the Midwest Brigade that's heading to Houston this weekend? We thought it was going to be Houston and Florida down at the Toyota Center, with Houston in the 1-2 seed matchup potentially on the weekend. No, it's Illinois, Michigan, and is that right? No, Illinois, Iowa. It's a bunch of Midwest schools that are headed down to Houston to take on the Cougars. But Big Ten with 6, SEC with 4. 4 of the 10 teams that got in are still playing in the little Sweet 16. 3 of the Big 12's 8. 2 of the Big East 3, which is pretty good, with St. John's and UConn. And then ACC. How about the ACC? What a rough year. Only 1 of the 8 teams who made the tournament are still playing. 1 of the 8, and that's Duke. And they got scared a little bit by Siena. So
that's right.
Maybe the ACC a little bit.
Tennessee taking out Virginia in there.
Well, and of course, the shortage of the Cinderellas and the upsets has left Texas as the plucky fun team at 11 seed. But
the one double-digit left.
They're the nation's most valuable athletic department, so they can hardly be, a Cinderella. So, as we've talked about, everybody's asking the question, what has happened to Cinderella? Where has it gone? Well, the answer is obvious. I don't think it should be considered some type of controversy or conspiracy theory or whatever. It's the reason now is that the players, the actual product that we turn on and watch, the Jack Golkes, the Bryce Drews, the Ali Faroukmanesh, well, they also now have upward mobility and can capitalize and monetize their newfound level of fame, right? But again, the coaches and the programs have been doing it the whole time. So if I make a list of the great all-time tournament Cinderellas for you folks, and you guys can weigh in with your favorite, but off the top of my head, George Mason Patriots of 2006, an 11 seed to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
Butler Bulldogs out of little Indianapolis, little school, 2010, 2011, Horizon League school, makes it to back-to-back final games. There's the Shaka Smart VCU-led Virginia Commonwealth Rams of 2011 from the play-in game to the Final Four in San Antonio.
Loyola Chicago. Took
down Georgetown, Purdue, Kansas along the way. Oh, yeah, how about Steph Curry's Davidson team?
Heard of him.
He got on a 30-bomb barrage. The Florida Gulf Coast, remember Dunk City?
Dunk City. I love it.
It's
my favorite one ever.
As a 15 seed?
They dunked everything, man.
And then, of course, Sister Jean and Loyola Chicago. You got the St. Peter's Peacocks of 2022. The UMBC Retrievers, Maryland-Boston County or whatever they're called in 2018.
Baltimore County, baby.
Baltimore County. They stunned the 1 seed. That's still an all-time sports upset. But what do those teams have in common? The coaches all left to go to bigger jobs and bigger paychecks. All of them. Jim Larinaga at George Mason, Shaka Smart at Virginia Commonwealth. Hell, the Butler coach is now the president of the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, Porter Moser went to Oklahoma.
That's a pretty good move upward, okay? And let's also remind you that individual programs, or the athletic departments, capitalized and seized on the opportunity to move up. Do you know that, Jack, that is Brad Stevens, the head coaches and the assistant coaches all elevate? But let's not forget, George Mason, Butler, and Loyola Chicago all opted as athletic departments to seize on their deep tournament runs and rise up in status in their conference. They moved up to bigger conferences. What does that do for the athletic department? They're making more money. Their paychecks are bigger. They're going to what else has that led to? Why aren't we seeing these teams? Well, they're in tougher, more competitive conferences, and they're not making the tournament as often, and where they were dominating their previous conferences. But that was the athletic department and the university seizing the opportunity for moving up. And there's nothing wrong with it. No one can criticize it. That's just the way it works. Well, now we got people criticizing players for doing the same thing, because the players now move on. When they move up after they make their runs, and they move to Power Fours where they have bigger paychecks. Can I play this for you? This was on ESPN Radio last night. I was listening. Tim Welsh, who was a former coach at Iona, Providence College, now serving as an ESPN analyst. He was on with Ian Fitzsimmons in the show that comes on after Trey Elling. And listen to him. This is not controversial. This is just what's happened in college basketball. It's why, whether the charm or the allure or whatever with Cinderellas is gone, it's just finally, as the financial model changes, players are moving up like the schools, the coaches, the assistant coaches, everyone else used to do for decade after decade. Here's Tim Welsh last night on ESPN Radio.
The thing about the NIL and the transfer portal and the Cinderellas, it's all in one. And the problem is with the mid-majors and the lower schools, these kids that come up and develop, we used to say you get old. And, we had some teams back at Iona that got old, and we had some teams in the MAC conference back then that got old. And we saw most recently St. Peter's got to the Elite Eight, and they were an old veteran team. Well, those teams aren't allowed to get old anymore because the players, as they rise up through the program that they're in, once they become good players, they get scooped up. They get scooped up by larger programs, and even mid-majors that are higher-end mid-majors that do have NIL. And not all mid-majors don't have NIL. A lot of mid-majors have good quality programs that are built with NIL, but I think the smaller schools that don't have it or don't have that opportunity to have that revenue for the players, they're not going to be able to keep the players. And you can't blame the players. It's unfortunate, but I think that time has passed, unfortunately. I don't think you're going to ever see a team built of really good enough players at that level to compete with the Floridas, with the Iowas, with the Houstons of the world. We may see a one-off one day where one team, some guy finds 5, 6 really good freshmen, and they all develop out of nowhere, or there's some special circumstance and they become a good unit together. But I think for the most part, it's a thing of the past.
All right, Tim Welsh, I think putting it pretty practically and pragmatically, and and I did the deep dive yesterday for you folks, Jack. Here you go. Of the 16 teams remaining, if you look at their starting fives, how many of them, of the starting fives of the 16 teams on the men's side that are left, how many of the 16 teams, Jack, we have 0 transfers in their starting five?
None of them, right? Maybe one.
One.
So like Michigan State.
Michigan State. Yeah. Tom Izzo is the Dabo Swinney of college basketball. He doesn't. He still likes.
Except he's right.
But he's right. What do you mean?
Dabo's wrong. Tom Izzo
why
is
Tom
apparently
Izzo?
right.
Well, what's the difference?
Tom Izzo is continuing to win, whereas Dabo has gone by the wayside.
Well, it's been a minute since Tom Izzo's been this far.
Yeah, sure, at the highest level, but
and this team's gotten old, and that's what they've been allowed to do in the Big Ten, as Tim Welsh just said. But Michigan State, all 5 of their starting 5 are they started their career at Michigan State, and they're still at Michigan State. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools with 1 transfer in their starting 5. There's 5 with 2. Nebraska has 3. Iowa and Michigan have 4 members of their starting 5 that came in from outside. And, Texas and St. John's, all 5. All 5. In the St. John's starting lineup and in the Texas starting lineup did not start their careers at Texas or St. John's.
St. John's has more Longhorns in their starting 5 than Texas does.
Yes, they do.
Dylan Mitchell.
Dylan Mitchell is in their starting 5, if you remember that name from way back. I mean, the Texas starting 5 began their careers at Oregon State, University of Houston and Tremont Mark, Purdue with Cam Heide, Xavier with Dalen Swain, and FAU with Modis. So, again, in Michigan State's the outlier essentially in this. Everybody else, Michigan's a 1 seed, now the odds favorite to win the whole thing. And, 3/5 of their starting 5 came from a mid-major. And, that's not uncommon. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And that's why the Cinderellas are going away. And the first couple of days, you may see an upset. But can I say this too, Jack, on Cinderellas? The greatest all-time upsets in college basketball men's side history were not mid-majors. They were Power 4 conference schools. It was Villanova in 1985 with Raleigh Massimino and NC State with Jim Valvano. In 1983, winning the championship, taking down Georgetown and Houston respectively. Well, those 2 programs came from stacked conferences. I mean, they came from the Big East and the ACC when both of those conferences were dominant, and they just got in and got hot. Those are the 2 greatest all-time Cinderellas, but, so those will still happen, and that's where Texas is. That's where Iowa is, and is a 9 seed. Tennessee is a 6. They've got an opportunity to make a run now, and that's the pragmatic view of where Cinderella has gone. And no, Texas can't be a Cinderella. They're not allowed. They own the castle. Cinderella Jack didn't own the castle where the prince lived.
She was cleaning the floors.
Right.
Her awful stepsisters.
Yeah. We'll leave that to Sister Jean.